Don't go anywhere. There's a lot of news breaking tonight. First and foremost, as we've been discussing, the Justice Department now openly discussing when Bob Mueller's investigation will end. I could tell you it'll go beyond next week, according to Bill Barr. And the nation is very interested in how Mueller will ultimately end this probe and what any report he writes will say. The rules, of course, do not require an automatic public report. The Attorney General will decide what to release from whatever Mueller found. And Bill Barr did talk up transparency at his confirmation. So tonight, if Mueller does hand the DOJ report, we want to probe what would it look like? How has he written reports before or tackled times where maybe people did bad things that might not be chargeable crimes? Our special report tonight, right now, looks at the clues of how Mueller may end this, a roadmap that comes from, yes, a report that Bob Mueller wrote in 2015 in a different role as a private, non-governmental investigator probing high-ranking officials and a big controversy. The organization at the time was the NFL, which was in hot water in 2014 for what it learned about and how it handled domestic violence evidence about Baltimore Ravens player Ray Rice.
An NFL player has been fired by his team, the Baltimore Ravens. We had already seen running back Ray Rice on video taken outside an elevator, dragging the unconscious body of the woman who is now his wife. But today, the world saw the proof that he struck her with a terrible blow.
That video sparked a criminal probe for Rice. He went to trial. But the NFL's larger role was under so much fire, the league agreed to tap someone who could lead a, quote, independent investigation. At the time, you may remember, people didn't trust just about anything the NFL said. So if the NFL claimed an independent investigation, they needed a whole lot more than the word independent or lawyers for hire. They needed an investigator to lead it who was basically above reproach. So just like Rod Rosenstein would do just a few years later, they asked an investigator in private practice who could shoulder that burden no matter what was found. It was Mueller time.
The National Football League has hired Mueller to investigate how the league handled the Ray Rice domestic violence case.
Robert Mueller, very respected.
Robert Mueller,
former FBI Director Mueller, will now look into this.
And look away he did in that environment of skepticism and pressure. And this was, let me be clear, Mueller's most recent public report. So it's relevant as everyone's focused on how Mueller might write his Russia report. Now, some of what Mueller did then is very familiar. You'll notice he ran a tight ship. Very little information leaking out. Reports at the time talked about how he worked in obscurity and didn't have any deadline for the report to be released, an echo of Bill Barr tonight. But there was no question about his thoroughness, reports highlighting Mueller's in-depth examination of evidence, NFL employees handing over scores of documents to investigators. And beyond the documents, Mueller explicitly tapped office gossip, rumors, potential clues. He interviewed every female employee, contractor, vendor, or intern who had any access to NFL headquarters, 188 women who all denied being involved in that April 9th call. That was a big deal at the time. Now, he hasn't interviewed Donald Trump in person, but his team sat down with those key subjects in the case, Ray Rice and his wife. And in the end, this report took about 4 months to complete, coming in at 96 pages, interviews with over 200 plus people. They sifted through millions of documents, emails, text messages, 51 computers, 42 tablets and mobile devices, all to see if anyone, anywhere, anyhow at the NFL knew what really went down. They also scoured 1,500 phone calls through 1,000 different telephone numbers. At the time, experts noted Mueller was operating basically as a private investigator. He couldn't force people to give up evidence, although he could bring down a commissioner, who knows. But he used similar strategies to today, reasoning he could maintain surprise and leverage by avoiding any public spotlight. And then as now, there were clues that he was working hard, grueling hours that started days before sunrise and, as USA Today reported, went leaving well after dark. Now, the comparison here is about Mueller's process and integrity, not, of course, the underlying subject. There was no mystery then about what Rice did. The only issue was whether the NFL really knew in advance. A lot of critics figured, well, they must have known. They must have done something wrong. So the finding of that report's actually not notable in that it did or didn't find wrongdoing. But it was independent, regardless of what political pressure there was. In this case, Mueller found all that evidence did not suggest the NFL knew about Rice's misconduct in advance.
Former FBI Director Robert Mueller's investigation found no evidence that anyone at the NFL had or saw the in-elevator video before it was publicly shown. Still, Mueller blasts the league for what he calls a limited investigation that ignored substantial information that suggested it should have done much more.
Now, at the time, there were others who argued the report wasn't a satisfying resolution. And while Mueller's assignment was different in 2015, we should note he also used the report to reveal some NFL mistakes that people could then learn from, even though they weren't allegedly criminal. He also criticized the NFL for not being thorough in the investigation that they did. And he also wrote, had the league done so, it may have uncovered additional information about the whole incident that was so disturbing. Now, that passage from the Mueller report shows he can detail a structural failure, even if it falls short of a crime. Today, he's dealing with a whole different probe and the power of the full federal government behind him. Mueller has indicted several of Trump aides already. That's a big difference. With Ray Rice, Mueller was looking at one question. What did the NFL know and when did they know it? With Trump, questions are often endless. You look at the DNC hack, the Russian contacts, all the evidence of obstruction in public, plus whatever he has in private. Now, Mueller was also able to interview direct subjects there, as I mentioned in Rice. Here, with Trump, Mueller has relied on written questions. So if he finishes without demanding an interview, that may show not that he couldn't get one when you look at how much evidence he tends to gather, but for whatever reason, he deemed he didn't need one. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.